The Galactic Council had existed for 12,000 years. It was a massive organization of 17 different alien species, all working together under the ideas of helping each other and keeping the galaxy safe. When humanity made first contact in the year 2187, they were welcomed as the newest and youngest members. The older species looked at humans with curiosity. They saw them as a strange species that did not live very long, but had an unusual talent for changing and adapting to new situations. Captain Nathan Cole stood on the bridge of his starship, the Meridian. He remembered the early days of humanity joining the Council. Back then, he had been a young ensign, full of hope and excitement. He wanted so badly to prove that humans belonged among the stars. Now, 40 years had passed. His hair had turned gray at the edges, and the hope in his eyes had been replaced by something heavier. Through the large windows of his bridge, he watched refugee transport ships slowly dock at New Geneva Station. The station was one of humanity's largest, built specifically to help people in need. It never seemed to be empty these days. How many this time? Nathan asked without turning around. His first officer, Lieutenant Commander Amy Liu, checked her datapad. She was a young woman with sharp eyes and a tired voice. 12,000 Velthary civilians, Captain. Their colony was attacked by the Kreth swarm. Nathan closed his eyes for a moment. He knew what was coming next. The Council voted against sending military help, Amy continued. They said it was too risky, too expensive. It was always the same story. The Galactic Council would have long meetings. They would debate for days or weeks. They would talk about risks and costs and political problems. And in the end, they would decide to do nothing. Then humanity would step in anyway, because someone had to help. Someone had to care. Nathan opened his eyes and looked at the refugee ships again. Inside those ships were families who had lost everything. Children who had watched their homes burn. Elderly Velthary who had lived peaceful lives until the swarm came. The Council had abandoned, but humanity had not got far away on Earth. In a grand building that had stood for centuries, Secretary of State Daniel Morris stood before the United Nations General Assembly. The room was filled with representatives from every nation on Earth, all listening carefully to his words. In the past 4 decades, Daniel said, his voice echoing through the chamber, human ships have responded to over 300 emergencies across Council space. Our doctors have treated billions of sick and wounded. Our engineers have rebuilt cities and stations on 47 different worlds. Our soldiers have protected species who had nobody else to defend them. He paused and looked around the room. Every face watched him with the same expression of frustration and sadness. And what have we received in return? Daniel continued. The Council has blocked our requests for full membership status again and again. They refuse to let us vote on security matters. They charge us taxes and fees that no other species has to pay. They call us too young, too emotional, too primitive to understand how the galaxy works. In the gallery above, Ambassador Patricia Santos listened to every word. She was an older woman who had spent 20 years working with the Council, trying to build bridges between humanity and the alien species. She knew better than anyone how hard that job had become. Patricia remembered her first day on Thesum Prime, the Council's capital world. She had been so excited, so proud to represent humanity among the stars. The alien diplomats had smiled at her and spoken kind words. But over the years, she learned that those smiles meant nothing. Behind closed doors, they laughed at humanity. They saw humans as useful tools, not as equals. The Council tells us we lack wisdom, Daniel continued down below. They say we are too young as a species to understand galactic politics. But I ask all of you today, what wisdom is there in watching innocent people die? What wisdom is there in doing nothing while entire worlds burn? The assembly hall erupted in applause, but Patricia did not clap. She felt only a deep sadness in her chest. She had tried so hard to make things work. She had believed that if humanity just kept helping, kept proving their worth, the council would eventually accept them. Now she was not so sure. Back on the Meridian, Nathan walked through the corridors of his ship toward the medical bay. The first Velthari refugees were being brought aboard for treatment. The Velthari were tall beings with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. They moved slowly, their bodies bent with exhaustion and grief. A young Velthari child sat on one of the medical beds. She could not have been more than 6 or 7 years old in human terms. A human nurse named Linda was gently cleaning a wound on the child's arm. The little Velthari watched Linda with wide, confused eyes. "You are a human?" the child asked in broken common tongue. "Yes, sweetheart," Linda said with a warm smile. "I'm human." "The council did not come to help us," the child said. "But you came. Why?" Linda paused for a moment. It was a simple question, but the answer was complicated. Why did humans keep helping when the council treated them so badly? Why did they risk their lives for species that barely acknowledged their existence? "Because it was the right thing to do," Linda finally said. "Because when someone needs help, you help them. That's just what we do." Nathan stood in the doorway, watching the exchange. He had heard similar conversations hundreds of times over the years. The people humanity saved were always grateful, always confused about why humans cared when nobody else did. And humanity never had a better answer than the simple truth that helping others was simply part of who they were. Later that night, Nathan sat alone in his quarters. Through his window, he could see the stars stretching endlessly into the darkness. Somewhere out there, the council was probably having another meeting, debating another crisis, finding another reason to do nothing. He thought about the 40 years humanity had spent trying to earn the council's respect. 40 years of sacrifice. 40 years of being treated like children. 40 years of giving everything and receiving nothing but contempt in return. Nathan did not know what the future would bring. But deep in his heart, he felt that something had to change. Humanity could not keep walking this path forever. Eventually, they would have to make a choice about what kind of future they wanted among the stars. The question was whether that choice would be made for them or by them. The vote came 3 months after the Velthari rescue operation. Nobody was surprised by what happened, but that did not make it hurt any less. Council of Rethanak of the Selenari Collective stood before the full assembly of the Galactic Council. She was a tall creature covered in shimmering green scales, with 4 arms and eyes that never seemed to blink. In her hands, she held a datapad containing Resolution 7742. "The humans have once again acted without proper authorization," Rethanak said, her voice cold and sharp. "They sent military forces into council space without permission. They engaged the Kreth Swarm without a vote. They have shown complete disregard for the laws and procedures that have kept this galaxy stable for thousands of years." The chamber was filled with representatives from all 17 council species. Most of them nodded along with Rethnak's words. Only a few looked uncomfortable. "Therefore," Rethanak continued, "I propose that this council formally censure humanity for unauthorized military action. Let this serve as a warning that no species, no matter how young or emotional, is above the law." The vote was quick. 14 species voted in favor of the censure. Only 3 voted against. The Velthari, whose people had been saved by humanity, voted no. 2 other small species joined them. Everyone else sided with Rethanak. Thousands of light years away, Admiral Catherine Price watched the broadcast from her flagship, the Constellation. She was a strong woman in her 60s, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too many battles. Around her, officers stood in complete silence. their faces showing disbelief and anger. "They actually did it," Commander Peter Grant said quietly. He was Catherine's tactical officer, a man who had served with her for 15 years. "After everything we did for them, they voted to punish us for saving lives." Catherine said nothing at first. She had warned the military leaders on Earth that this day would come. The Council had never wanted humanity as equals. They wanted helpers who would do the hard and dangerous work while staying quiet and obedient. Humanity had refused to be quiet, and now they were paying the price. "Set a course for home," Catherine finally said. "There's nothing more for us here." On the diplomatic station orbiting Thiessen Prime, Ambassador Patricia Santos requested an emergency meeting with High Arbiter Zeleth. He was the ancient leader of the Dasari, the oldest and most powerful species in the Council. Zeleth had ruled for over 800 years, and in all that time, he had never once questioned the way things were done. The meeting room was beautiful in a cold, empty way. The walls were made of polished white stone that seemed to glow with inner light. Zeleth sat in a large chair at the center, his 8-legged body perfectly still. His 4 eyes watched Patricia as she entered. "Ambassador Santos," Zeleth said through his translator device. "I assume you wish to discuss the vote. High Arbiter, humanity saved 3 million Velthari lives." Patricia kept her voice calm, even though her heart was pounding with anger. "We did what the Council refused to do. And for that, you punish us." "You acted without authorization," Zeleth replied. "The procedures exist for a reason. Order must be maintained, or the galaxy falls into chaos. People were dying while you debated procedures. That is unfortunate, but it does not change the law." Zeleth shifted slightly in his chair. "You should be grateful, Ambassador. Many counselors wanted sanctions against your people. The censure is a mercy." Patricia stared at the ancient creature before her. She thought about all the years she had spent trying to understand the Council's way of thinking. She had made excuses for them. She had told herself that they just needed time to accept humanity. She had been wrong. "High Arbiter, I have served on this station for 20 years. In that time, I have watched humanity give everything we have to this alliance. Our money, our technology, our lives. And I have watched the Council take and take while offering nothing but contempt in return. Ambassador, you are becoming emotional. This is precisely why humanity is not ready for greater responsibility. My daughter is a doctor on the hospital ship Grace," Patricia continued, ignoring his words. "Last month, she worked for 3 days without sleep, treating Corvani plague victims. She saved hundreds of lives. Do you know what the Council did during that crisis? You released a statement expressing concern. That was all. Words on a screen while my daughter collapsed from exhaustion saving your people." Zeleth's 4 eyes blinked one after another. "Your species feels things too deeply. You cannot separate emotion from duty. This is a flaw in your nature." Patricia laughed, but there was no happiness in the sound. "You call it a flaw. We call it compassion. We call it caring about the suffering of others, even when those others treat us like dirt beneath their feet." She turned and walked toward the door. Her hands were shaking, but her voice remained steady. "Ambassador Santos, this meeting is not concluded," Zeleth called after her. Patricia stopped but did not turn around. "Yes, High Arbiter." "It is." She walked out of the room and did not look back. Behind her, Zeleth sat in silence, his ancient mind struggling to understand what had just happened. No ambassador from any species had ever spoken to him that way. No one had ever walked out of a meeting with him. For a brief moment, something that might have been concern flickered across his face. But it passed quickly. He was 800 years old. He had seen species come and go. Humanity was young and foolish. They would learn their place eventually. They all did. Patricia walked through the corridors of the station in a daze. Other diplomats passed her, some nodding politely, others pretending not to see her. She had just ended her career with that conversation. She knew it, and she did not care. When she reached her quarters, she sat down at her desk and opened a communication channel to Earth. Her hands moved across the controls automatically, selecting a private frequency that only a few people knew about. A face appeared on the screen. It belonged to Daniel Morris, the Secretary of State. "Patricia," Daniel said, his expression worried. "I heard about the vote." "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry," Patricia replied. "Be ready. I just walked out of a meeting with Zeleth. I told him exactly what I think of the Council and their precious procedures." Daniel was quiet for a moment. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I'm done pretending, Daniel. I'm done smiling and bowing and hoping they'll accept us. They never will. They don't want partners. They want servants." Patricia leaned closer to the screen. "And I think it's time we stop serving." On the other end of the call, Daniel Morris felt a chill run down his spine. He had known Patricia for 30 years. She was the most patient, diplomatic person he had ever met. If she had reached her breaking point, then things were worse than he had imagined. "Come home, Patricia," he said softly. "We need to talk." The message arrived at exactly 8 o'clock in the morning, Earth Standard Time. It reached every human ship, every space station, every colony world at the same moment. Across the vastness of space, millions of humans stopped what they were doing and turned to the nearest screen. President Samuel Hayes appeared before them. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and a kind face that had grown tired over the years. His hair was completely white now, and deep lines marked his forehead. He wore a simple dark suit, and behind him hung the flag of the United Earth Government. "My fellow humans," he began, his voice heavy with emotion, "and citizens of the galactic community. For 40 years, humanity has served as a faithful member of this alliance. We joined with hope in our hearts and hands ready to help. We gave our money. We gave our technology. We gave our labor. We gave our very lives in defense of species who could not defend themselves." On the bridge of the Meridian, Captain Nathan Cole stood frozen in place. Amy Liu was beside him, her face pale. Around them, every crew member had stopped working. The only sound was the President's voice coming through the speakers. "We asked for nothing in return except to be treated as equals. We wanted only to be respected as partners in building a better galaxy. This was not too much to ask. We believed that if we showed kindness, kindness would be shown to us. We were wrong." President Hayes paused. When he spoke again, his voice was harder, stronger. 3 days ago, the Galactic Council voted to censure humanity. Our crime was saving 3 million innocent lives. Our crime was refusing to stand by while people died. Our crime was caring too much in a galaxy that seems to care too little. Nathan felt Amy's hand grip his arm. He did not pull away. "This is not the first time we have been punished for our compassion. Over the past 40 years, the Council has blocked our advancement at every turn. They have called us too young, too emotional, too primitive to understand their ancient wisdom. They have taken our help and given us nothing but scorn." The President took a deep breath. "We have tried to change their minds. We have tried to prove our worth through actions. We have given everything we have. And still, they see us as lesser beings. Still, they treat us as servants to be used and discarded." Nathan thought of his sister, who had died 15 years ago treating plague victims on a distant world. He thought of all the friends he had lost over the decades, all the heroes who had sacrificed everything for ungrateful aliens. His eyes began to burn. Effective immediately, President Hayes announced, "All human military vessels are ordered to return to Sol System. All humanitarian missions are to be transferred to Council authority. All human citizens currently in Council space are advised to make arrangements to come home. A sound escaped from Amy's throat, something between a gasp and a sob. Nathan finally looked at her and saw tears streaming down her face. "We do not make this decision in anger," the president continued. "We make it in sorrow. We came to the stars hoping to find friends. We hope to build something greater than ourselves. Instead, we found a galaxy that measures worth by age rather than action. A galaxy that values rules over lives. A galaxy that takes everything and offers nothing." In the corner of the bridge, the ship's doctor, Linda, had fallen to her knees. She thought of all the patients she had treated over the years, all the aliens she had saved. She thought of the little Velthary girl who had asked why humans helped when no one else did. How would she explain this to children like that? The Galactic Council has made clear that humanity is not welcome as equals. Very well. President Hayes straightened his shoulders. We accept their judgment. We will no longer burden them with our presence. We will no longer offend them with our compassion. We will return to our own space and trouble them no more. He looked directly into the camera. His eyes seemed to meet the eyes of every human watching. To my fellow humans, I say this: do not be ashamed. Do not regret the help we gave. Everything we did was right and good. The universe is better because of our kindness, even if the universe does not know it. We will carry that truth in our hearts, and we will build a future worthy of who we are. The screen went dark. For a long moment, nobody on the Meridian spoke. The silence was so complete that Nathan could hear his own heartbeat. Then, slowly, people began to move. Some hugged each other. Some cried quietly. Some simply stood in shock, unable to believe what had just happened. "Captain," Amy finally said, her voice breaking, "what do we do now?" Nathan turned to look at the star map displayed on the main screen. Somewhere out there, billions of aliens were probably watching the same message. Some would celebrate. Some would not understand. And some, maybe just a few, would realize what they had lost. "Now we go home," Nathan said. "We follow orders. We leave this part of the galaxy behind. And the people we were helping? The refugees? The sick? The ones who still need us?" Nathan closed his eyes. This was the hardest part. This was the question that would haunt every human who heard the president's words. "We tell them the truth," he said finally. "We tell them that we wanted to stay. We tell them that we would have helped forever if they had let us. And we tell them to ask the council why we left. Let the council explain. Let them answer for what they have done." He opened his eyes and looked at his crew. These were good people, kind people, people who had dedicated their lives to helping others. They deserved better than this. Humanity deserved better than this. "Set a course for Earth," Nathan ordered. Best speed. The Meridian turned away from the stars it had protected for so long. Behind it, 12,000 Velthary refugees watched from New Geneva Station as the human ships began to disappear into the void. They did not understand what was happening. They only knew that the kindest beings they had ever met were leaving, and they were afraid. Across the galaxy, on 1,000 different worlds, the same scene played out. Human ships turned toward home. Human doctors put down their instruments. Human engineers stopped their repairs. Human soldiers lowered their weapons. Silently, without threats or demands, humanity withdrew, and the galaxy grew darker. The first crisis came 6 weeks after the last human ship crossed back into Sol System. A Kreth swarm emerged from hyperspace near the Talani homeworld. The Kreth were mindless creatures of destruction, billions of them traveling through space like a living storm. They consumed everything in their path, stripping planets down to bare rock. The Talani had always been safe from them because human rapid response forces had been stationed nearby. But the humans were gone now. The Telani sent emergency signals to every council member. 50 million sentient beings on their homeworld looked to the sky and prayed for help to arrive. On Thesan Prime, Councilor Vrethamak called an emergency session. The great chamber that usually buzzed with confident voices was now filled with confusion and fear. "We must coordinate a response immediately," Vrethamak said. Her scales pale with stress. "With what forces?" asked the Corvani representative, a small creature with large black eyes. "Our fleets are not built for combat. We have transport ships and cargo vessels, not warships. The Selenari have only ceremonial guards. Who among us has the military power to fight a crest swarm?" No one answered. The silence stretched on and on. In his great chair at the center of the chamber, High Arbiter Zeleth finally spoke. "Contact the humans. Request their assistance." The message was sent within minutes. It traveled across the void of space to Earth, where it was received by government officials and delivered directly to President Hayes. The president read the message carefully. Then he handed it to Secretary Daniel Morris, who stood beside him in the Oval Office. "What is your response, Mr. President?" Daniel asked. Hayes walked to the window and looked out at the night sky. Somewhere up there, 50 million Telani were about to die. He knew exactly what that number meant. He understood the weight of every single life. "No response," he said quietly. Daniel hesitated. "Sir, 50 million people. I know the number, Daniel. I know exactly what I am choosing." Hayes turned to face his Secretary of State. "And I know that if we go back now, nothing changes. We save the Telani today. Next month, we save someone else. And then the council votes to punish us again. The cycle continues forever. So we just do nothing? We do exactly what they asked us to do. We stay out of their affairs. We let them handle their own problems." Hayes sat down heavily in his chair. "Do you think this is easy for me? I will see those 50 million faces in my dreams for the rest of my life. But if we give in now, humanity will never be free. We will always be their servants, called when convenient and discarded when not." The Telani homeworld fell in 18 hours. The Kreth swarm moved across the surface like a wave of death, consuming everything. The survivors numbered fewer than 1 million, and they were scattered across refugee camps on nearby systems. The council held a moment of silence in their memory. It was not enough. Other crises followed in the months after. A plague broke out on Corvani Prime. It was a terrible disease that spread through population centers with frightening speed. The Corvani doctors did not know how to treat it. Their medicine was not advanced enough. But human doctors knew exactly what to do. Human hospital ships had handled this plague a dozen times before. On Earth, Dr. Linda Martinez, who had once served on the Meridian, watched the news reports with tears in her eyes. She knew she could help. She knew exactly which medicines would work, which procedures would save lives. Her hands itched to do something, but she stayed home. Orders were orders. The plague killed 300 million Corvani before it finally burned itself out. The Valtteri mine colony suffered a catastrophic failure of its atmosphere processors. The machines that kept air flowing through the underground tunnels simply stopped working. Human engineers had designed the backup systems for those machines. They knew every wire, every circuit, every failsafe. A young engineer named Marcus sat in his apartment on Mars and stared at the technical diagrams on his screen. He could see exactly what was wrong with the Valtteri systems. He could fix the problem in his sleep. But there was nothing he could do from so far away. 12,000 Valtteri miners suffocated in the darkness before anyone could reach them. The Selenari Collective, one of the most powerful species in the Council, began to fall apart. Their economy had grown dependent on human trade goods over the past 40 years. Earth's agricultural products fed their outer colonies. Human medical supplies kept their hospitals running. Human manufactured goods filled their stores. Without humanity, the supply lines collapsed. Prices rose to impossible levels. People went hungry. Riots broke out on a dozen Selenari worlds. Councillor Vrethenak, who had authored Resolution 7742, stood before the council and demanded solutions. But the council had none. They had spent 12,000 years relying on order and procedure. They did not know how to handle chaos. On Earth, life continued. The human worlds prospered. Without the burden of supporting the entire galaxy, resources that had once flowed outward were now invested at home. New colonies were established. New technologies were developed. The standard of living improved for every human citizen. But there was sadness too. Sadness for the friends they had left behind. Sadness for the people they could not help. Every human who had served in Council space carried invisible wounds that would never fully heal. Admiral Catherine Price retired to a small house on the coast of California. She spent her days walking on the beach and watching the waves. Sometimes she would look up at the stars and remember the battle she had fought, the lives she had saved. Was it worth it? Her husband asked her one evening. Catherine did not answer for a long time. Finally, she said, "Every single life we saved was worth it. I just wish we could have saved more. I wish they had let us stay." Back in council space, the situation grew worse with each passing month. Species that had once cooperated began to fight over resources. Old conflicts that had been suppressed for centuries flared back to life. The delicate balance that had held the galaxy together was crumbling. And always, there was the question that nobody wanted to ask out loud. What did we do? Why did the humans really leave? The Velthari knew the answer. The Talani survivors knew. The small species who had voted against the censure knew. But the powerful species, the ones who had treated humanity like servants, refused to admit the truth. It was easier to pretend that humans had simply abandoned them. It was easier to call humanity selfish and cruel. It was easier to blame the victims than to look in the mirror. But deep in the night, in the quiet moments when there was no one else around, even the High Arbiter himself wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. 1 year had passed since humanity's withdrawal. 1 year of chaos, suffering, and death. 1 year of watching the galaxy fall apart piece by piece. High Arbiter Zeleth called a private meeting of the Council's most senior members. The great chamber on Thesan Prime, which had once been filled with light and the sounds of busy diplomacy, was now dim and almost empty. Only a handful of representatives attended. Many others had stopped coming to meetings altogether. Zeleth looked older than he ever had before. His 8 legs moved slowly, and his 4 eyes had lost their sharp focus. 800 years of certainty had been shattered in just 12 months. "We face a simple truth," he said, his translator struggling to convey the weariness in his voice. "The galaxy is dying without them." Councillor Vrethenak sat nearby. Her scales, once bright and shimmering, had turned a dull gray color. She had not slept properly in months. Every night, she dreamed of the Talani homeworld burning. Every morning, she woke up knowing that she had helped cause that destruction. 17 humanitarian crises in 12 months, she reported. Our combined response to all of them was less than 1/10 of what the humans used to provide by themselves. "Then we must invite them back," said the Corvani delegate, his voice desperate. "We apologize. We offer them full membership. We give them whatever they want. I have already tried this." Zealous words fell like stones into the silent chamber. 3 times I have sent messages to Earth. 3 times they have refused to receive our ambassadors. They will not even speak to us. Nobody knew what to say. For thousands of years, the Council had been the center of galactic civilization. Other species came to them for help, for guidance, for leadership. The idea that someone would simply refuse to talk to them was impossible to understand. Finally, the Velthari representative stood up. Her name was Kethara, and she was different from the others in the room. She was one of the few counselors who had actually visited Earth. She had walked its streets, eaten its food, and spoken with its people. She understood humans in a way that the others never could. "You do not understand what you have done," Kethara said, her golden eyes sweeping across her colleagues. "You humiliated them. For 40 years, they gave you everything they had. They bled for you. They died for you. And you treated them like servants, like children who needed to be taught their place." "We maintained proper order," Rethanak began. "You maintained your pride." Kethara's voice rose with anger. "I warned you when Resolution 7742 was proposed. I told you exactly what would happen if you passed it. You did not listen. None of you ever listened." Zeleth tried to respond, but his translator only produced broken, confused phrases. "We cannot. The galaxy requires. They must understand their role." "Oh, they understand perfectly." Kethara moved toward the door. "That is the problem. They understand now exactly what you always thought of them. And they have decided that they owe you nothing." She stopped at the doorway and looked back one final time. "The humans have a saying on Earth. It goes like this: you do not know what you have until it is gone. I hope you remember those words in the years to come. I hope you remember them every time you see another world burn." Then she was gone, and the chamber fell into silence once more. Far away on Earth, Admiral Nathan Cole stood at the memorial wall in Houston Space Command. The wall was made of black stone, and carved into its surface were thousands of names. Each name represented a human who had died serving the galaxy. Each name was a story of sacrifice that would never be fully told. Nathan reached out and touched one name near the bottom. His sister's name. She had been a doctor on a hospital ship. She had died treating alien plague victims on a world whose council representative had voted for the censure. "They're reaching out again," said a voice behind him. Nathan turned to see Amy Liu approaching. She was a captain now, with her own ship and her own crew. But she still visited the memorial whenever she was on Earth. "The Council?" Nathan asked. "Not just the Council. The Velthari have offered a mutual defense pact directly to Earth. The Talani survivors want to relocate to human space. The Kovani are asking for medical aid outside of Council channels." Nathan nodded slowly. "And what did we tell them?" "We told the Velthari and Talani yes. The President is meeting with their ambassadors next week." Amy paused. "The Kovani request went through as well. We're sending doctors tomorrow." "Good." Nathan looked back at the wall of names. "That's good. Some people think we should stay out of everything. They say we should let the whole council collapse and never help any of them again. Those people are wrong." Nathan's voice was firm. "We didn't leave because we stopped caring. We left because the council wouldn't let us care the right way. The Velthari didn't vote for the censure. The Talani didn't vote for it. We can help them. We should help them. But not through the council? Never again through the council." Nathan turned to face Amy. "We build something new. Something better. We work with species who actually respect us, who see us as partners instead of servants. And we show the galaxy what humanity can do when we're not being held back." On Thiessen Prime, High Arbiter Zeleth sat alone in the Great Chamber. The holographic displays were dark. The diplomatic chatter had faded to nothing. For the first time in his 800 years of life, he had no answers. He thought about the day humanity had first joined the council. He remembered looking at their ambassador and thinking how young they seemed, how naive. He had smiled and welcomed them, already planning how to use their energy and resources for the Council's benefit. He had never once considered that they might leave. The humans had not screamed at the Council. They had not threatened war or demanded revenge. They had not tried to destroy everything the Council had built. They had simply, quietly, withdrawn. They had taken their ships and their doctors and their engineers and gone home. And in that silence, in that absence, the galaxy had learned what it truly meant to stand alone. Zeleth closed his 4 eyes and let out a long, slow breath. Somewhere in the darkness of space, humanity was building a new future. Somewhere out there, species that had been saved by human kindness were joining them. A new alliance was forming, one based on mutual respect instead of ancient rules. The Council would survive, perhaps. It would continue in some form, but it would never again be what it had been. It would never again hold the power and influence it had once enjoyed, because the humans were gone, and they had taken something precious with them. Something the Council had never valued until it was too late. They had taken hope. And hope, once lost, is very hard to find again.